So Adam and I actually talked about, after the disappointment on Sunday, pushing this episode ahead and recording on Sunday. We even talked about maybe Tuesday doing it then. But the wounds were too fresh. I just felt like, honestly, giving this a little bit of breathing room on this season before we tackle this was probably the right move. Now we're 5 days out, and I feel like perhaps a little more perspective will be on the show today. Welcome, everybody, to the Walk-Off. I'm Scott Belford, joined, as always, by Adam Mack, and Sunday was a disappointing one, buddy.
Yeah, man, was it ever. I think it was just so disappointing because the Jays really showed up.
Yeah,
But
they
it
did
was
everything
too
they
little
had to
too
do.
late.
Exactly. And I can't remember in my history of watching baseball, watching my team lose in that fashion. You know, where they won the game they had to win, and then your scoreboard watching.
Yeah.
And there was even that hope, you know, with Washington being up 5-1 on the Red Sox going into the sixth there, and the Yankees and Rays at 0-0 in the ninth, and you're just like, maybe this is all going to work out.
Mm-hmm.
And then as quickly as that thought came to your head, it was gone. So we're going to deep dive this today. We're going to get into why we feel the Blue Jays lost this season. How successful was this season? Is there a gray area in sport? I think there is, that it's not necessarily a failure or a win, but we will touch on that. We'll get into the playoffs that are going on right now. We'll obviously touch on the wild card spots that have advanced, and, of course, Randy Arozarena. Just hard not to continue to talk about that young man, Mr. October, for the modern age. So lots to talk about. We'll get into it. Before we do that, I did wish to bring up, we have separated our guest from our news portion of the podcast. We did have on the show this week Sem Robers, pitching prospect for the Toronto Blue Jays. And we actually sat down and talked with Sem in spring training before the season. Really great kid out of the Netherlands. He was one of the free agent signings, international free agent signings that they had back in 2020. So it was kind of cool to catch up with Sam and kind of see how that season went for him. He started in the Fall League in 2020. He played about 11 games. That was before we talked to him. And then, of course, he was in Low A in Dunedin this year and finished in High A with the Vancouver Canadians. Really great interview for a 19-year-old kid. The head on this man's shoulders. It bodes well for Blue Jays fans. So you can check that out. That's going to be on our YouTube page. You can check under the full conversation bar there. And, of course, wherever you get your podcast, it'll just be in order of the episodes that we released. All of our guests are brought to you by YourRate.ca. Darren Brown, the mortgage broker, sure to help you get into that mortgage you're after, whether it is a new mortgage or whether you're looking to redo your current one. Darren Brown, sure to help you. I did wish to take a quick second here and really thank Darren Brown for his sponsorship. We're just a little Blue Jays podcast, and definitely very thankful that he can do it. So if you don't have like a brother-in-law or something in the mortgage game and you watch the podcast, Darren Brown, check him out, YourRate.ca.
Well, I tell you what, Scott, I just moved for the last week.
Yeah.
Still renting, but I can guarantee the next time I move will be the last move for a long time. So Darren's going to be getting some business from me here pretty quick. Well, hopefully not too quick. Give me a year and then.
Yeah. It's so funny. I was just talking, Adam and I were talking before we started this, and he's just like, oh, man, like, moving is never ending. And it's true. Until you move, like, you always have that at the end of a move, you open another closet, and you're like, oh, I forgot about this closet that's completely still full.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get right into this, Adam.
Okay.
91 win season. 91 wins this Blue Jays team won. Now, I predicted at the beginning of the season that the Jays would win 90 wins and make the wild card game. You predicted 88 wins and just on the outside of the wild card game. Both of us were wrong. They exceeded where our predictions were.
Yep.
So before we deep dive into this, I just want your opinion on how you feel about this season. Obviously, the fact they're not in the playoffs is disappointing, but just your a reaction right now, 5 games after they've been eliminated.
Well, I did have to go back and check my notes from April and May and listen to a couple of episodes just to kind of remind myself of how I felt at the start of the season. I I can't say anything other than wildly successful year.
Yeah. It really did exceed most Blue Jays expectations, and I think that it is important to remember where your expectations were, because of course it is frustrating, and I know that there's a lot of rhetoric out there. A loss is a loss, right? This season is a failure because they did not advance. And I truly believe that much like life, sports has a gray area, right? That not every success or failure is based on wins and losses, and that there is a trajectory of this team moving forward.
Yep.
That I think was a success. I think that they got a lot of experience for this young core that had never experienced big-time games before. And you know what? Personally, I think, and I don't know if you agree with this, Adam, throw 2020 right out the window. You know, like, I know they made the playoffs. I know that they had some big, unquote, quote, games in 2020. But it was a 60-game season. It's not the same grind. It's not the same mindset. It was a sprint, not a long-distance race. And baseball's a long-distance race. So this truly was, for the first time, these kids getting to experience this. And I think that that's invaluable.
Yeah, it's invaluable, and it's going to pay off next year when, like, I think as far as missing the playoffs go, this was the best possible way to do so. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously I'm biased because as a fan, we got 162 games that were worth watching.
Mm-hmm.
But from a
we were invested right until game 162. Like, that is something that I have not experienced as a Blue Jays fan other than 2016, maybe in my entire life.
Literally into October, we were in on it. But from a development side, to miss out in such a, like, crushing way at the end, this is the
boys
kind of...
are motivated.
They're motivated. Think of, like, those 14 games we lost early in the year where we had a 3-run lead going into the 8th inning, right? Or think of all the games where, you know, we were out of it early and then we kind of just phoned it in through the second half of the game. Those are the games that next year this team is going to realize, like, every game matters. If we can even hold on to one extra right now, or if we can claw our way back and steal one from the loss column, that's literally the difference between continuing and going home in a pretty sad way. So,
and I think that this is where us recording this 5 days after the disappointment was probably the way to do this, because there is some silver linings to this season that right after that initial loss, it's tough to kind of go over them and accept them as that being the case. Because the truth, and whether you wish to hear this as a Jays fan or not, the truth is Tampa Bay, Houston, the Los Angeles Dodgers, these teams didn't happen overnight. These organizations didn't become dominant juggernauts overnight. These teams are not teams that had the clubhouse culture to just plug and unplug players in and out of it overnight. That's not how this works. And the Blue Jays have done an incredible job of building a base for this organization. The front office, in my opinion, has done a great job. And yes, they are not perfect and mistakes were made, as is with every organization. But coming into 2022, I really think that this team is in a good place. Listen, I do want to put a little bit of perspective on this. So this team, like we said, won 91 games, didn't make the playoffs. Now, 2015, which is a team that is heralded by all Jays fans as the shining light of what we want, right? They won 93 games, and they won the division.
Yeah.
Go to 2016, they won 89 games, and people forget this. This team in 2021 won more games than the team that went to the ALCS in 2016. Yeah. This was a very, very good team. And I am not an apologist. I am not making excuses for this team. I am just saying that there are circumstances that allowed this team to win 91 games and not be in the playoffs. I just want to go over a few things here. The fourth place teams in every division. So Toronto was 91-71. The Los Angeles Angels 76-85, Kansas City 74-88, Colorado 74-87, the Cubs 71-91, and Miami 67-95. So this really goes to show you that the Blue Jays had a very, very tough division and played a lot of very good teams, because I wanna go into this even deeper. The Toronto Blue Jays played 92 games against teams that were above 500 in this season. Wow. 92 games. They also had the best record in Major League Baseball against teams above 500. So they held their own. Now, this is a product of being in the AL East. Especially
Sorry, can we just touch on that for 1 second? You mentioned that we had the best record against teams above 500. So the flip side of that coin is we donated a bunch of wins to the Orioles, the Tigers, and the likes of that.
Yeah. That is a young team, dude.
That's a young team mistake.
Team getting jacked up to play the Yankees and then going into Baltimore and losing that first game because you let down. And I don't think we're going to see that as often next year. And also, let's face it, playing 92 games against teams above 500, like, I want to put this in perspective. So the Tampa Bay Rays, anyone in the AL East was pretty much in a very similar situation. The Rays won the AL East, and they played 89 games against teams above 500. But listen to these other division leaders, okay? The White Sox, who won the AL Central, they played 56 games against teams above 500.
What?
56 games, and that's why they won the AL Central. They beat up on a bad division.
Yeah.
The Astros played 76. The Braves, 68. The Brewers, 67. And the Giants, 63. Dude. Like, to just instantly say failure is failure and that this team failed is really not taking in all of the circumstances that this team was up against. And this team, on top of it all, played 35 games at the Rogers Center.
Yeah, that's nuts.
They played 35 home games. Listen, I all the love in the world for Buffalo. They came out in droves to support this team, and I love it. They had a decent record at Salem Field. I think they were a few games over 500 there. But, man, Tampa was just brutal. They played, and this is the thing, they played 23 games in Tampa. They went 10-12 or something like that. Maybe it was 21 games. 10-11, I think, was the record. But nonetheless, like, they were playing home games in an away stadium, in a minor league ball stadium. I feel very comfortable saying that had they played 81 games at Rogers Center, they would have won another 5 to 8 games.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty safe assumption. I mean, on top of the impact it plays from having the home field advantage, it's also got to have some effect when you're playing on the road, having been on the road for 4 months straight.
Yeah.
Right? Like, all your road games are just that much harder, not having a home to come home to, not seeing your wife, your kids, what have you, right? So.
Well, I mean, I was reading just the other day that Hyun-Jin Ryu, right? He went 8 months without seeing his 1-year-old daughter.
Wow.
Because
now she's a 2-year-old daughter.
Now she's, and that's like, and this is the thing, is people don't understand how much that affects people, right? Like, you're away from your family. You're trying to play through this odd baseball season where you've got 3 different home stadiums. I mean, I don't want to keep making excuses, but George Springer, their $150 million guy, played 77 games with this team. Less than half the season. Had he played 120, I think that's another 5 to 8 wins.
Yeah, probably.
Not even if they were in Rogers Center or not. Like, just look at their win-losses with Springer compared to without him. I don't want to make all sorts of excuses for this bullpen and this front office either, because this front office did screw up by not fixing the bullpen in time. That said, pretty tough to do it on the go, and they actually did a decent job getting Richards and Simber and shoring things up. It was just, let's face it, one game too late, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you can't predict Kirby Yates is going to be out for the entire season on a Tommy John surgery when you go out and get your big closer. You can't predict that. You can't predict that David Phelps is going to be out for the rest of the season after like early May. You know, like you can't.
Okay.
Listen, I know teams everywhere get injuries, so this isn't. I'm not saying that this. I'm not continuing to pile up the excuses. However, these are things that really did affect this team.
One thing though is the Kirby Yates can't predict he was gonna go down for the year. I have to
Although he did fail his
Well, I have to kind of object to that because the whole reason we got him at such a cheap offer was because
he failed his physical.
He failed his physical, and there was the risk kind of coming in. So that was kind of a calculated decision. I feel like they built a contract knowing that, like, yeah, we might not get a single game out of this guy.
Yeah.
Right. So,
which is true. And that was a mistake. I mean, that's one thing that this season showed is that, man, had this bullpen even been half decent in May and June, they would have won the division.
I don't know if signing Kirby Yates was a mistake. Like, I think it was a high upside lottery ticket that didn't work out. But, like, had it worked out, again, there's another 5 to 8 wins.
That's right.
So.
And there's some crazy fun things that happen this season, right? Listen, the Toronto Blue Jays, the 2021 Toronto Blue Jays, most home runs in franchise history. They hit 258 bombs this year. Wow.
That's pretty cool. How many 30 home run hitters did we have?
Teoscar, Marcus, Vladdy. Did Bo hit 30 or did he end
I think he was like 28 or 29.
Yeah, he was at 29.
What
I think.
a bum. Plus Springer was well on pace for over 30.
Springer had 22 home runs in 77 games. Like he obviously would have hit 45 home runs and 100 RBIs like all the other boys did. I mean, the Blue Jays played in 3 stadiums. Simeon set home run record for second baseman. Ray is going to win the Cy Young. Vlad is going to finish second in ML MVP voting. Bo and Teo were both all-stars. Manoah's called up and is going to get votes for Rookie of the Year and dominated. Romano becomes an elite closer. Blue Jays trade for Jose Barrios. Had you given me this list in April, I literally would have called bullshit. I would have been like, no, none of that happened. And I think all of these things is why this was such a disappointing year for so many fans. Like, to watch the Jays perform at an elite level and finish in 4th place in the division with no sniff of the playoffs. Like, heartbreaking, man.
Well, I think you just pointed out 2 pretty important pieces to our pitching staff moving forward. I think Romano is our guy.
Yeah.
That's one less question, right? And adding Barrios, right? I know we all want to re-sign Ray and whatever, but like...
And we will get into that, but...
We'll get into that, all right.
Yeah, but Barrios was huge.
Okay, so here's a question. The Kirby Yates, risky, maybe he doesn't play much, kind of a contract. This offseason, how would you feel about doing something similar with another guy? A guy who has all the upside in the world, is an injury risk, Noah Syndergaard. If the Jays went out and were able to get a Noah Syndergaard on like a 1-year, prove you're healthy kind of a deal.
What are you talking? 15 mil?
Oh, I think it would take more than that.
You think it takes more than 1 year, 15?
Yeah.
I don't know. If it's a 1-year deal, I'm fine with anything.
Yeah.
It's an interesting question.
He hasn't pitched in 2 years.
Yeah.
I mean, he came back and pitched like 1 inning or 2 innings this year in September.
Mm-hmm.
Claims to be healthy. When he's healthy, is a top 10 pitcher in the league.
Yeah.
Is that a stretch?
I mean, he would need to rebuild his value a little bit, and maybe there is someone out there who'll give him $20 million for 1 year and see what happens there. I mean, 2 years without pitching, man. A lot of question marks. But I'm all for it. If it's a 1-year deal, I'm all for it.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that's where I come back to the Kirby Yates thing, though, where it was incentive based.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, here's $25 million. It's $5-10 million guaranteed, and then $15 million in bonuses, right? Like, you pitch 100 innings, there's an extra $10 million. You know, you pitch 150 innings, there's an extra $15 million. Something like that.
And this
right?
is one thing that we are going to deep dive into next Friday, is we'll probably see if we can get a guest that is an insider for the Blue Jays, if we can pull that off, and really kind of pick their brain and go over all the options that this team has in the offseason. I think that would be a fun episode.
Mm-hmm.
So we are just kind of unpacking where the Jays were at after this season.
Sorry, I don't mean to get us off the rails and look too far ahead.
No. It's a great question, man, and there are a few of those out there. Yeah. I got a question for you now. If you were to pick one thing, the biggest happening, I guess, the biggest step forward for this Jays team, what do you think it was this year?
Vladdy being happy at first base.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. And just Vladdy showing that he's legit.
Superstar.
He's a superstar. Yeah. While we're speaking Vladdy here, this is kind of a cool little stat. Vlad becomes the second player 22 years or younger to lead the AL or NL in hits and home runs since Ty Cobb in 1909.
Man.
22. And I think this is one of the things where we really do have to kind of take a step back and realize that this core is making substantial steps forward, that this core is accumulating experience that is going to be vital come 2022. And if you go back to when Atkins and Shapiro were kind of giving their timeline, they said 2021 we're going to be competitive, 2022, 23 we're going to be going for World Series. And so far it lines up, man.
Yeah.
I've been called an Atkins apologist, so maybe I am always looking at the bright side of things. And yes, this front office will have some answers, or will have some questions to answer at the end of next year if this team once again doesn't make the playoffs. I just don't think that's going to happen.
I don't think so either. I mean, health is always a question, but as long as everybody is reasonably healthy, I can't see us not taking another giant step forward.
Agreed, man.
Like, even if we lose Simeon, even if we lose Ray, we're not going to just lose them and be like, okay, well, we're going to roll with who we like.
Yeah, I think
we're not going to replace.
There will be replacements for these guys, absolutely. And let's get into that for a second here, because Marcus Simeon, and I am curious what your thoughts on this. So if you could only choose one of them, I'm starting to lean more and more towards Marcus Simeon than Robbie Ray.
Okay.
And my reasoning for this is that I really was surprised by the exit interviews of a lot of these players, how much he meant to this clubhouse. Like, Bo Bichette, dude, was in tears talking about Marcus Simeon, which worries me a little, because I know I was listening to Tim and Friends, and Tim McAuliffe had the thought that Bo was crying because he already knows Marcus is gone. Mm-hmm. And I hope that that's not the case. I hope that he was just tearing up just thinking about what an incredible inspiration he's been to this team. But to see how much these kids look up to Marcus, I mean, there is an intangible element to that value that is really tough to pinpoint, right? It's really hard to actually put a number on the value of that. But I think his value to this core is far higher than I had originally given it credit for. I don't know where you are on this. I do feel that Robbie Ray is a superstar, and I do think he is going to be a legit ace, but I mean, we are literally signing, if they sign him in this free agent offseason, we're literally signing him at his highest value, and there's no way that the money that he gets is going to be worth it, in my opinion.
Okay, let's just unpack that last sentence. That last sentence also applies to Simeon.
It does.
I still feel like pitching is harder to replace. Like elite,
It is.
top end level pitching is harder to replace. I love Simeon too. We saw the Oakland reunion this year and how emotional that was. Like, obviously, he's just an all around good dude, right? Like, there's not a single person who works with him who doesn't have respect for him, his work ethic, what he brings to the table, all those intangibles. Absolutely. That being said, he is older. There's more options at shortstop on the free agency to replace him. Would love to see him back. I don't really care to overspend to bring him back. As far as like,
he might be cheaper than people think he is because of the amount of high-end free agent shortstops. I think someone is going to wind up taking less than they want. I could be wrong. And
well,
it might not be
hopefully he's the poor guy at the end who's stuck in Toronto. As far
with
as
his $25 million a year salary, yeah.
As far as Bo Bichette goes, I think sometimes, and I think all of us, hopefully, are lucky enough in our lives to experience something similar where someone, whether that's a coworker, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, whatever, comes into your life and it's not a permanent relationship, but they affect you and the effects have a lasting impact on your life long after they leave. Right? Whether they taught you how to be a better man, whether they taught you how to just have a better work ethic, whether they taught you how to love yourself, whatever the case may be. And I think that's what this is with Simeon, is Bo recognizes whether or not he's back. You know, when Bo Bichette's
for him this season,
when Bo Bichette's career is done and we're having the 5 years post retirement, is Bo Bichette a Hall of Famer conversation, I don't think there's any way to ignore the impact that a Marcus Simeon had on his 22-year-old season. Right? Like, for better or for worse, how to show up at the field, how to put in your time, do your drills right, not take shortcuts, all this sort of stuff. And I think Bo just recognizes that, like, all the future success that he has, in some small part, he's going to owe to his relationship with Marcus Simeon. And I think that's pretty special. And I think that's pretty cool. So,
and you know what? And I love that you bring this up because I agree with everything you just said there. I think the mental acumen of this team and this young core is so superior to a lot of young cores. And I think a lot of it has to do with their dads. I mean, my goodness.
Yeah.
You look at the bloodlines on this team, and it's not like these kids haven't been around clubhouses their whole life. But for Bo to recognize that, and obviously recognize it, and verbalize it during an interview like he did at the end of the season there, man, bright stuff for this team. Like, for them to be that dialed in at that age. Yeah, exciting stuff. Did you have anything else to add here, Blue Jays-wise? I know we touched on Marcus and Robbie Ray, and I know I love Robbie Ray. I hope he comes back. I don't think he's a $30 million a year pitcher. I don't wish to see them sign him for that. I don't think this is one of those scenarios where you need to hand over a blank check and just whatever is put down, it's a win. I don't think that's how this is going to work. I think there are other options out there as well, and I think that the Blue Jays will be looking for the 2022 Robbie Ray. Doesn't mean they won't be in the talks to sign Robbie Ray, but I think they will be looking for value guys that maybe are, Pete Walker takes a look at it and he's like, well, he's tipping his pitches.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Which is what he did for Berrios and Ray. Like, both those guys. Ross Stripling was a guy that Pete Walker, the whole problem with Stripling was he was tipping his pitches.
Right. Well, I think you just asked if I had any last takeaways from this Blue Jays season, and I would say that stretch, that last week of the year, we had a huge series against the Yankees, and our guys, our young core, absolutely rose to the occasion. Like game 2 against the Yankees, Bo Bichette had a massive game. Where do you go? 4 for 4 with 2 home runs.
Yeah.
Right? That massive go-ahead home run in the top of the 8th. Vladdy was in the middle of kind of a slumping cold streak as far as Vladdy goes. I think he was like 0 for 24 or 2 for 24 in the last little bit. And then still had that, I think he had either one home run or the shot that went off the top of the wall. Like,
yeah, the double, yeah.
It's just good that these guys didn't crumple under the pressure of playing the Yankees with everything on the line, right? Like, they had...
And they could have, if you look at teams that are in the same realm as them, so let's say the Chicago White Sox, if you look at their last few years, they did crumple, right? They had good seasons, and then the White Sox, right come September, I think it was 2019, they just literally collapsed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and look at the Mariners, had their run down the end. They really pushed hard for the playoffs. But on the other side of that coin, they took like 5 out of 6 games against the White Sox. Or not against the White Sox, against the Athletics. Right? Yeah. So like the Athletics is a team who was right in that wild card race till the final 10 days of the season.
2 weeks, yeah.
And they just faded, right? They just kind of caved towards the end when they needed to show up at their best. So that for me was a big takeaway, was just that our guys kept pushing. We came up short. It was too little too late. But there were some pretty big moments there in that Yankees series. And
there were.
It was pretty cool.
There were some pretty big moments in that Baltimore series, and how dominant that team was. Like, they did not give the Orioles any breathing room. I mean, yes, it got a little dicey there in that first game where they were up 6-0, and then it ended 6-4, and they gave up a bunch of runs in the 8th, but they won it, and then they destroyed them the other 2 games.
Yeah. Do you want to have a quick look at our early season predictions that we made from back in March?
Yeah, if you've got them up and quick and easy to grab, let's do it.
Yeah, I've got them. So we've got these in our Discord for anybody who's following along. You're not in our Discord, get in our Discord. There will be an invite in the description of this video. But your Blue Jays prediction was big year for Grichuk.
That was my long shot, though, right?
These are all our long. These are our fun long shots. Yeah. So big year for Grichuk. Mine was Kevin Biggio wins a Gold Glove at third base.
Boy, we were both way off.
I would say yours was closer. So that was our Blue Jays specific prediction. We both made AL and NL predictions. In the AL, your prediction was that the Royals are good.
Yeah, no.
And mine was that the Yankees miss the playoffs.
Hey, so you actually...
It was pretty close.
Pretty close.
Pretty close.
But wrong. Both of us were wrong.
But wrong, yes. Although, to be said, that last Yankee series where we went 1-2, if we had won that last game, we would have been in the wild card, and they would have been on the outside looking in.
That's right.
So, in the NL, both our predictions look pretty bad. Mine was Fernando Tatis Jr. has a bad season and makes his $300 million contract look like a disaster.
Nope,
not the case. Barring his health, that contract I'm sure will be just fine as long as he can stay healthy. Your prediction was Trevor Bauer wins the Cy Young and opts out of his contract.
Right.
I mean, you kind of got it half right. I don't think he'll be playing for the Dodgers next year. So I'll give you that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
But,
Well, those were our long shots. Did we have that was it?
that was it.
Okay. Let's move on to the
Right.
MLB here. First off, that Yankees Red Sox wild card game,
Yeah.
man, the Jays would have been so much better. Like it would have been such a more fun game. Like I don't know if I'm just bitter against those two teams. I did not enjoy that wild card game. It was boring to me. Now that said, damn, that Dodgers St. Louis game. Holy cow. Like
Yeah.
I can't remember enjoying a 1-1 game that was 4.5 hours quite that much. Like the time on that game didn't even make sense. It really dragged on at times, especially for a game that had no scoring.
Yeah. I don't know. Honestly, my whole playoff experience has been kind of hampered by this stupid Sportsnet app.
Yeah.
I don't want to get too far into it, but anybody who has the Sportsnet app and is watching through their streaming service
It's been
can
a pain,
probably
absolutely.
relate how terrible it's been. So hopefully they update that in time for the next round
Yeah.
of the playoffs. But
So let's end it on this. Obviously, Houston beating the White Sox last night. I think Houston's going to sweep them. I don't think the White Sox are near as good as people originally were giving them credit for. Tampa Bay, I feel like they're going to steamroll Boston, and I could be completely wrong.
I think that's a
But
sweep for sure.
I think they took last night's game 5-0, and Randy Arozarena. Let's end it with just talking about this kid.
Okay.
21 years old. He has 11 home runs in his 21 postseason games. Like, just let that number rattle around your brain for a bit. Like, he's hitting a home run every 2 games in the postseason. And then last night, anyone who watched him steal home plate, straight steal. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't the catcher dropped the ball and Randy ran for it. This was he literally timed up the Red Sox pitcher and stole home. It was crazy. If you haven't seen it, you need to YouTube it. But if you're going to watch it, I suggest you find the 3-minute clip where
The whole at bat.
the whole at bat, because you can tell the third base coach is timing the whole time. And each time Randy's getting a little further off the base, and then all of a sudden he just goes, and it was so fun to watch, man. Like,
Nice.
and straight steal, it wasn't even close. Beat him by a second. Like, It was amazing. This kid, like, to be so clutch in the playoffs. He's a rookie. He's going to win Rookie of the Year this year. I know it's BS because last year he still had something like 100 at bats and then won the ALCS MVP. But it's weird to say that this kid's a rookie, but like he's a rookie and he already has 11 home runs in 21 postseason games.
Yeah. That's nuts. I mean,
Big
George
time
Springer
player.
has a reputation of being a guy who shows up in the playoffs.
In the playoffs,
19
yes.
home runs in 63 playoff games.
Wow.
And Arozarena has 11 through 21.
21. Unreal.
Wow.
Yep. Bright future for the kids in Tampa Bay, that's for sure. Wando Franco has been putting on some displays of talent as well. All right, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. We're all bummed out about the Jays, but time will heal all wounds.
Yes, sir.
Enjoy the playoff baseball while it goes. We will release our interviews throughout the offseason separate from our news here, so you can keep an eye out for that. Of course, Semro Burst is who we chatted with this week. It's all brought to you by YourRate.ca. Darren Brown, the mortgage broker, sure to help you get into that mortgage you're after, whether it's new or redoing your current one. YourRate.ca. All right, everybody, take care. Cheers.
Cheers.